people that have sworn an oath to uphold our Constitution and our rights to petition the government. These are the people that have sworn the oath to us. Okay, now we are over at Representative Steve Draskowski's office. And Steve, thank you for meeting with us. And could you tell us where you serve in the state of Minnesota?
Sure, Nancy. I serve in the southeastern part of the state, House District 28B, which encompasses the southern portions of Wabasha and Goodhue County and the northern portion of Winona County. So down in the banana belt of Minnesota, if you will.
One of the things that have been brought to you by your constituents has been the judicial reform that's necessary, and you sat on the ad hoc committee with Representative Severson. Could you just give us a reaction to that meeting that you attended?
Well, I was really taken back at that meeting by really how pervasive the problems within the judiciary seem to be presenting themselves in different areas. Just from that group of, what did we have? I think there were probably 60, 70 people or something in the room, something like that. And in the face of the state of Minnesota, that isn't a large sampling of the population of the state. But for a meeting like that, that's really I think a good showing of at least for us legislators, that there's an issue here that we need to take a look at. Is the judiciary being responsive to the people, or is it developing this protection around itself that leads it, that might be leading it in a direction that is not in the interest of our history as a state, the integrity of the process in our state and the people of our state.
Were you surprised to hear that the judges have a rule that they can take their tips, they can take bribes?
I don't remember all the particulars of that. I remember some things in there that sounded pretty shady, but then again, we need to take a look, and part of that is we need to validate some of these assertions that come forward.
It's right in their own rules. Okay. I know that you guys can't even take a cup of coffee.
Yes.
But they can take their gifts.
I am remembering some of it now. And again, those rules and the people, Nancy, essentially hold each of these institutions accountable, whether it's the legislative branch, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive branch. The people are in control, and we need to remember that. If enough people get involved and bring these issues to the surface, change can happen.
And one of the things that was discussed there was, well, there's several, but also articles of impeachment, asking for true bills of impeachment against certain judicial officers. And that's one of the things that you've considered, and I was wondering if you're still considering that whole issue on the impeachment, because that's a legislative function to impeach on the judicial branch.
Well, I think certainly if particular cases rise to that level, I think it's our responsibility as a legislature to consider those and to have those type of evidentiary hearings that would validate the concern. And if something rises up to that threshold, it's our responsibility, according to the Constitution, to follow through with them. But again, they have to rise up to that level.
Actually, before bringing the bill of impeachment, we did go to the Board on Judicial Standards more than once. The Board on Judicial Standards says we needed to appeal it. We did appeal it. In fact, we went to the Supreme Court, and we got a ruling from the Supreme Court that the judge, in fact, was violating the law. But here's the thing, folks, and this is what I want you to understand so clearly in your mind. The Minnesota Supreme Court cannot impeach a judge. The Minnesota Supreme Court now is in control of the Board on Judicial Standards. That's our only safety valve right now. That's the only place that citizens can go to, is what's been described as a black hole. A board that's controlled, it's in secret, and they only make recommendations to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court cannot impeach. They cannot remove an officer from office. That power lies here in our legislature, because this is where the people put that power. And so we went through all the processes. We went through the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court even said, this judge is doing wrong. So you know what? We took this to the legislature. It got buried, and it got sent back to the Board on Judicial Standards, who then said, we can't do anything about this. They can't do anything if a judge does something wrong from the bench that violates someone's rights. You know why? That's your power. That's your duty to do something. So I have this complaint. I'm going to be presenting it to the committee. This judge violated the citizens' constitutionally secured rights. Do you know that we have a statute that says when someone has been found to have violated their oath of office, there is an immediate vacancy in that office and the governor will appoint? We actually have a statute that says that. And yet, for goodness, how long has it been, Tim? A year and a half now? This judge, it has been adjudicated, this judge violated her oath of office. She's had an oath of office that says she's going to uphold the Constitution. She was adjudicated as violating a citizen's constitutionally secured rights. She violated her oath of office. Clear, concise evidence. She sits on the bench today. I was in her courtroom and confronted her and asked her why she's still on the bench. You know what she told me? No one's done anything to take me off.
And Ms. Lazaryan, so have you forwarded a complaint to the Board on Judicial Standards specifically addressing this issue?
The Board on Judicial Standards does not have the power to remove the judge.
No, but the board does have the power to discipline.
No.
Or misconduct.
No, they do not. All they can do is make a recommendation to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court at that point can do something like a private reprimand, which is put them in a closet for 10 minutes, or they can do something like a public reprimand, which is post something on the website for 30 days, and then that's it. Or they can like say, well, you need to give that, they need to have a fine of $1,000. Well, where that $1,000 goes, we don't know.
Okay, Ms. Lazaryan, now, so what is your specific recommendation here?
My specific recommendation is I have bills, I have complaints. I have 3 specific complaints, actually not written by me, but actually written by several people. I have 3 different situations that I want to serve upon this committee. I want one, if not all of you, to carry these complaints into true bills of impeachment. I want these judges impeached. I want to see this go through the revisor's office, and I want these judges, upon the evidence that's before you, to be impeached by our legislature. I would like to see one of you to carry, you can each carry one of them. But that's what I have here, and I have another judge that absolutely ironclad, he's committed tax evasion after the fact by covering that for an attorney-client friend of his on the record. Absolutely on the record. All of this ironclad evidence of what the judge's malfeasances are. And the Board on Judicial Standards can do nothing about these specific facts that are contained in these specific complaints. They are not empowered to do anything about them. Only our legislature can do something.
Okay.
And then there is one more that I'm handing to you that is just out. It was about a judge that had taken somebody who's a friend of his came and said, this neighbor's bothering me. And this judge went to the person, actually went to the sheriff and have the sheriff haul the person in to his courtroom without trial, put this man in jail. And he did go to this went to the Board on Judicial Standards, and he was fined $1,000, and he's had other reprimands. This person has to come off the bench, and it's not in the form that it is here, but it is something that needs to be taken care of.
Well, in regards to issues like that, and just for members here, members here and for the audience, when we have a specific case here that has gone through the board and the board is not addressing those situations, if you bring that to your legislator, ask them to task the Board on Judicial Standards for giving their recourse or their inaction in that particular process would be the proper course of procedure. And one of the issues that I had requested, I thought that Mr. Nathan was going to address, was the Board on Judicial Standards. I do have a bill in, it's 1632, which reforms the Board of Judicial Standards, and hopefully we'll get a hearing on that. But it is one of those issues that I think we need to realign and say, what is the real responsibility and accountability with the Board of Judicial Standards, and are we expecting the right things out of that, and then it goes to the impeachment process. So if you'll leave that with us, Ms. Lazaryan, I appreciate it.
Okay, just to answer that real quick, the current Board on Judicial Standards does not have the disciplinary power. They can only recommend to the Supreme Court. That's what the bill that you're discussing changes that and brings that back under the control of the legislature, where it's supposed to be under Article 6, Section 9. If that was actually happening now, if that bill had passed and we had that vehicle, we wouldn't have to be asking for these bills of impeachment, because we would have a mechanism in order to hold the judges accountable. But we don't have that, and these judges are still on the bench, and these people are still being violated, and something has to be done.
Okay.
That's why I'd like to present this to the board.
We've worked together for a lot of years, and I think it might have been a learning curve for both of us. So, yes.
Yep.
Learning curve for both of us. So I've approached change in maybe more of a vocal way than what a lot of people do. But what I've always appreciated is that you've listened to my voice, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I think it becomes very frustrating. We have big government. Big government often doesn't respond, to single voices, and sometimes they don't even respond to corporate voices or, a gathering of people. That's the job of representative government, though, is to listen to the voices.
One of the things that I learned about you very early on is that you're a veteran, and that you swore an oath back when you were in service to uphold our Constitution and actually defend it against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
Right.
And I think we've maybe agreed that there are some enemies that are actually attacking our Constitution here domestically.
And, I think it was Thomas Jefferson said that the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so there are plenty of areas in which our Constitution and our liberties are assaulted on a regular basis, from special interests to dictatorships. And so those are issues that we have to not just kind of put on the back burner, but we have to have them in the forefront so that we can respond properly to those threats. And that really comes through representative government, through the people having the ability to touch their representatives, those who are bringing their voice forward. So there are challenges, but I think probably the biggest challenges that we run today is that people are not engaged in their government, that they are not letting their voice be heard, and that the daily demands have overtaken their ability to watch what's going on with the people who they have determined will administer their government.
Exactly. And we've worked a lot in the issue of judicial reform, bringing forward corrupt issues in the judiciary that need to be corrected. And one of the things that I notice is a lot of people that are not in our district, in our part of the state, calling you and asking you for help. What would you say to those people?
Well, I would say I am always available. I think that's one of our duties as a representative is we represent our district first, but we represent the people of Minnesota at large. And so I would not discourage them from calling, but their first call should be to those people that represent their particular district. Those are the ones that they have either they have as a group elected that person into office, and so they need to contact that individual to make sure that that individual is reflecting their views. If not, find out what the views are of the district they live in, and then begin to work at a grassroots level to change the attitude of those, to make them listen to what the issues are. Now, on the judicial side, it's a very important issue, because that is a third branch of government that basically has been moving beyond its bounds constitutionally and begin to legislate from the bench. I don't know that happens in a large percentage, but even a smaller percentage who disregard the law from the bench or who are abusing their authority from the bench, it becomes a huge issue in terms of personal liberty and the threats to personal liberty.
And I think one of the things that we talked about is there's no way to stop it.
Right. I think the whole issue of judicial accountability has been acquiesced. It's been given over from the legislature, which it was originally intended to be. And so now we have judges watching judges, which is never a healthy situation, because there is no recourse for the citizenry who are abused within the system, particularly if there's cronyism or if there's a covering up of those abuses by the judicial side themselves.
So we lose our eyes and are actually to watch them, because right now the Board on Judicial Standards, the group that's supposed to watch over and hear the complaints, is secret.
Well, and not just that, but they will readily admit that the statutes that are in place right now give them no leverage in terms of disciplining a judge. If a judge makes a bad decision, they can't do anything about it. They can come back and say you need to revisit this, but in terms of discipline or in terms of reining them in, there's really little process in which they can be disciplined, or the recourse for the citizenry is just about non-existent.
And they'll say, well, you go to the appellate court for that. And how many people can afford going to the appellate court? I mean, we heard from Sergeant Westfall and how he's going to be paying off his lawyer's fees until his golden years.
Well, not just that, but I mean, in this present fiscal environment with $6.4 billion budget shortfall, public safety fees for services have just about doubled. So now you're just talking about it not only not being able to get justice, but it becoming so onerous financially to get the justice that the average individual just simply can't go there because they don't have the resources to do it.
And don't we have secured in both our federal and state constitutions that we get justice freely and without cost?
That's correct. And that's why this is so problematic. I mean, a lot of our society has moved over to not so much the criminal, but the civil, when you're talking about child protective services and some of these other things that get brought up to the courts that end up clogging up the courts, but those courts cost dollars. And so, there's a real problem with the process and that we're going through, and it needs some major reform. But I think a lot of it goes to judicial accountability, that if we have judges who are trustworthy, and we do for the most part, but there are a few, I think, that when there's a question arises, we need to be able to respond immediately to that so that there isn't a continued string of abuses that's taking place from a particular area without redress from the people.
Well, and if we go even one step deeper, the whole issue of everybody going to court, sue somebody, isn't that indicative that we're not able to resolve matters and problems amongst ourselves, that we've totally lost a real sense and basic moral foundation?
I wholly agree. I think that there is, biblically speaking, it says don't take your brother to the courts, basically, to resolve this issue. Go talk with him and see if you can resolve it outside the courts, and that's a very healthy way to do things. Yeah, I think when the courts become a profit center, when they become a place of making money or commerce rather than making it a place where issues are resolved, it becomes hugely problematic, because now we have perverted the judicial system, we've perverted the courts into something they were never intended to be. They were intended to sustain our rights, to create a plane of equity or a place of redress instead of a place of making money.
And so what some of the solutions that you and I have worked on are redoing this Board on Judicial Standards into something that's actually controlled by the legislature, that's full of citizens and not judges and attorneys. And that's now been reintroduced. A couple years ago we had a bill, and now there's another bill. And could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, and I think, you know, the process is fairly complex, coming up with a new system in which to implement a Board of Judicial Standards that would have some teeth, that would actually be able to do the things that we need it to do in terms of legislative oversight, in terms of judicial incorporation, is very challenging. And I know your working group has put together some proposals there. Those are good proposals, they're a good starting point, but there needs to be a hearing on it. There needs to be a process in which we can go through to say, okay, if the current system isn't working and you don't like this one, what is one that will work?
And that's going into committee and actually hashing things over.
Yeah, that's partially in committee. I think that can be done, but I think in terms of longer term, we need a working group that is basically going to be coming together again and simply turning our face from this whole issue and saying it's too complicated, we can't do it right now, is the wrong step to take. I think we need to begin to realize that we've got major issues here. We need to put together the working group and come up with a proposal to the legislature, and unfortunately we haven't been able to get that in front of the.
And there was an ad hoc committee that you called, and we had a couple of justices or people that ran for the justice that testified. These were people of attorneys with lots of experience, and were you amazed, or were you already knew what was happening, but that so many people came forward? What was your response to that?
Well, it was enlightening to me because I saw people who are working within the system through the legal side who gave credence to the issue that, you know, we need some reforms here, because we have we have people who are working in the system who don't want to address the system or can't afford to address the system because they're putting their careers on the line. There should never be, and even particularly on the judicial side in our courts, a place where people are threatened, their livelihood is threatened from practicing because of judges' favor, judicial favor.
Well, and the Supreme Court handles and is controlling the licenses of the attorneys. And I remember hearing attorney after attorney beg the legislature to put their license under Commerce instead of under the Supreme Court, so that they would be free to speak out, because one of the rules that the Supreme Court has said is the attorneys cannot speak out against the judges.
Yeah, and that's hugely problematic. That's like putting a gag order on anybody that's going to speak negatively against your agenda.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that is not free government. That is not transparent government. That is not a government that responds to the people. It responds to special interests.
So this program is going to be airing across the state, and I imagine there are going to be people calling you saying, well, I've got this problem or that problem. Would you suggest that they call their own representative, get a group of people together and go in and speak with the representatives and senators? Because the session's going to be over, and there's going to be this time in the summer. It's time to go and have meetings in the offices with people. And I think that's one of the interesting things that people don't understand, is that you can call up your senator, you can call up your representative, and you can go have coffee at the local restaurant and sit down and talk with them. They're not untouchables. And that's, you know, when I called you, the first thing you said, let's go have some coffee.
Yeah, and I think that you have to have that personal contact, and then allow the people that are representing you to kind of hear your story. You know, I've gotten just a ton of calls from people all over who have these stories of abuse, and my first response is, have you talked with your representative? Have you told them about it? And if they have, then I'm willing to you know, step up a little, and I try and steer them towards the group that's working with this issue to compile some information, because I simply can't take everybody's, you know, woes on, you know, the wrongs that have taken place. However, it does create an indictment for the individual representative who is not listening and responding. And at that point, then I say, look, then you need to find someone to run in your district who will listen to the voice of the people, who will respond to the people's concerns, so that your government is doing what it's supposed to be, and it's representing a voice, not even necessarily your voice, but it has to be able to respond to the constituency. And we don't need people down here who are just in here because of status or here because of, you know, power or whatever. We need people who are down here for public service, people who understand that our democracy or our republic is a fragile thing, and it does not work if the people don't have input into the government.
So First solution, folks, is make your phone calls to your representatives, to your senators, whether your concern is having to do with judicial reform or anything that you feel needs to be addressed, you need to call them. And the other thing is that we would like your assistance in that Representative Mullery has been blocking us getting its House File 1632 being heard in committee. And that needs to happen, that process needs to come through, and that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people screaming for this judicial reform, and one person can stop it is amazing. How does that happen? How does that happen that one person can do that?
Well, typically when the legislative body doesn't want to deal with an issue, they'll bury it in a committee, and then the committee chair becomes kind of the gate guard for that particular issue. However, if there are enough people that are behind it and that are working towards it, it puts the pressure on so that the issue should be heard. And you know, I think this next year will be a bonding year. It will also be a policy year. It'll be a good time to put the your feet to the phone and say, you know what, we need to have this heard. And if you don't, then we're going to actively campaign. I tell you, there's one thing that will get a political figure's attention, and that is I will actively campaign against you. And that's exactly what needs to transpire. That is part of the process, that if we don't like a particular person in that seat, then it becomes incumbent upon that individual and those who are rallying behind the cause to put some feet to your action and just say, we'll find a good person, somebody who believes in representative government, and we're going to take you out and we're going to put them in.
What you